Welcome to New Release Review, part of the Movie Friends podcast. My name is Seth, and today we're talking about The Iron Claw from 2023, directed by Sean Durkin. We will be discussing spoilers, so please, if you haven't seen The Iron Claw, turn this off, go watch it, and then come back and finish listening. My guest for this episode is Andy from the Fat Dude Digs Flicks podcast. Andy, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me, Seth.
Hey, thanks for coming on. We were just saying before we started that it's been about a year since we talked last. I came on your show to talk about The Iron Giant. And now you're here to talk about The Iron Claw.
Now here we are. The Iron Claw, an odd change in trajectory for this Iron franchise, for sure.
Definitely. And you're the one who reminded me of that, by the way. I just want to let everybody know I did not put those two things together.
I also said too, I'm like, I feel like we'll have to meet up again next year and then go back and do The Iron Lady, which is a movie I don't like at all. But
I've never seen it. So
yeah. That's a snooze fest. Which I hate to say, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just kind of general thoughts. Like, what did you think about it?
I really, really loved this movie. The story of the Von Erich family is something that I kind of grew up with. I grew up as a big fan of professional wrestling. And you know, in the 80s, my main exposure to professional wrestling was WWF. It was on TV, it was on MTV, you could see it everywhere. But you buy Wrestling Insider or Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and they kind of go across all of the territories, and you read these stories of Ric Flair and the Fabulous Freebirds and Midnight Express and the Von Erichs, and it's like you read about these people, and that's kind of like the mythos builds in your mind because you don't get to see them. And then, over time, Kerry Von Erich appeared in WWF as the Texas Tornado. And I was like, oh, yeah, he's cool because he was buff. At that time, it was like you wanted to like the buff guys. And you didn't really know as much of the tragedy behind everything at that time. And then as I grew up and read into it, it's like, oh, man, this would just be one hell of a story to tell. And finally getting to see it, I say finally getting to see it. I don't know that the anticipation of seeing something so tragic on the big screen is something I was like, oh yeah, I want that. But it's just something that's so I feel is so ingrained as part of what I like and appreciate. To kind of see that on the big screen was exciting is not the right word to use, but I felt really excited to kind of get to see this movie, and the execution was pretty dang near what I was hoping for. It strikes the right tone, and just I really enjoyed it. Long story long. I really had a great time. Or, had a terrible time, enjoyed the movie.
I agree. I understand exactly what you're saying. I was born a little bit later.
Sure.
And so I didn't find out about the Von Erichs until probably reading about them on the internet. And it really is such a unbelievable story that so much tragedy could befall this one family. But knowing Sean Durkin and knowing how much potential there is in this story, I was also very excited. I was anticipating this movie more than most of the movies that came out this year. And I think I said somewhere how nervous I was to go see it because I just knew. And someone said well, why? Isn't it a wrestling movie? And you don't want to spoil any stories for anybody. And so I was just like, not really, and I was absolutely floored. I don't want to sound dramatic, but I can't remember the last time I left a theater and was still crying. I was crying walking down the main hallway. There was a bakery next door to the theater, and I just kind of collapsed in a seat. I was like nervously talking to people around me. Like some kid was there studying. I was like, what are you studying? I was just in such a state, and I ended up sitting there for close to an hour until I felt like, okay, I can go out and rejoin the world now. It was so impactful. And yeah, I was very happy with the end result.
Yeah. So watching things that have to do with this story, kind of like, either internet documentaries or even The Dark Side of the Ring that deals with the story, you hear the quote quite a bit of like, I used to have 5 brothers and now I have no brothers.
Right.
So it's like, that quote. And then when they say it in the movie, Zac Efron is doing such a good job of playing Kevin Von Erich that still, it is just like, it hurts. And I had to text message my brothers. I have 2 brothers, and I texted them afterwards. I was like, "Look, we're not the Von Erich family. We never had any of the fame or the trauma of the Von Erich family. But I just want you guys to know that I love you. And I think I need to make sure I say that just because you're important to me. So that stuck with me. And I think ever since I've walked out of the theater, I've just been like, okay, when will I have time to see this again?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
I want to check it out again. And I know that I'll still probably have that same emotional reaction to it as I did the first time.
Yeah, I don't buy every movie that I love. I do believe in collecting physical media, especially in the day that we're in. But generally, when I buy something, it's because I want to be able to recommend a movie to someone and hand it to them and say, watch this. And then when you give it back to me, we can talk about it. And this is definitely one that I will purchase so that I can make sure people see it. I don't rate a lot of films 5 stars on Letterboxd. This was like an immediate, like I sat down, I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, I can't think of a film this year that has impacted me as much as this one.
Yeah.
And it looks good. It's funny.
Yes.
It's well acted. It's entertaining. And what I liked about it, and I guess my first kind of question for you is, I'll ask you the question and then I'm going to answer it, right? This is going to be not very good interview tactics.
Like a podcast.
Yeah. How you felt about how they handled the deaths or the motorcycle accident? Because at first I was pretty stunned to see that we didn't see anything. And I was like, oh, that's so odd. Why would they do that? And then it keeps happening. And it kind of dawned on me by the 5th or so tragedy. I was like, oh, this is actually genius that they don't show anything. Anyway, how did you feel about that?
Yeah, I felt very much the same way. When the first Von Erich brother passes away, I was like, we don't see anything. We're getting to hear about this the way the family's getting to hear about this. And I think for me, that was kind of where it was like, oh, well, that's what's happening. This is the story from Kevin Von Erich's perspective. And so Kevin wasn't in Japan when David passed away.
Right.
And so Kevin would have heard about this. And so we're getting to kind of feel that. I worry that if we did see it, it would almost feel a little bit more exploitative. I screwed that word up. But I feel like it would be kind of exploiting the Von Erichs. And I feel like that would actually lessen the impact of it because it would feel very like, oh, here's the shocking thing that we're going to show you. When instead it's, you're just kind of left to deal with the impact of it the same way that the family is. I think the way that they use it for everything that happens with Carrie is very effective because you don't see things happening, but you see what has happened. And it comes as a shock, after the accident, where you first see him. It is like, oh yeah. Well, they actually kind of show that. And then after his his fate. I'm talking like, we already said that we're going to spoil this movie.
Oh yeah,
but I'm still talking like,
yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the movie, where he's killed himself, it's haunting the way that we find him, the way that it's handled, and I appreciate that a lot more than if it was like, the typical movie way of like, we watch him write the note, we watch him walk to the tree, we watch him sit down, maybe put the gun against his chest.
Yeah.
I feel like it's much more effective that we get it as like, we are happening upon this just as Kevin and the rest of the family is.
Yeah, it was very, very shocking when we see him walk into the kitchen and we finally see that his leg part of his leg is missing. And Jeremy Allen White, great job.
Yeah.
I kind of went into this expecting for him to steal the show for me a little bit, and not that he doesn't do that, but I don't know that I've ever been so on board being in the hands of Zac Efron as an actor and as the story is being told. He blew me away. Like,
incredible. Incredible.
Yeah.
This is the guy from Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates, like High School Musical, and he's shows that he's incredibly capable, shows that he's incredibly talented. It shows that he can be show restraint, which I think was just It's awesome when an actor can this stuff is happening, but the actor doesn't dial up what's happening to like the highest level. They're playing the feeling, but not like going overboard, and it just makes that character feel so real. Like, of course, Kevin Von Erich is a real person, but Zac Efron's portrayal of him just feels very tangible. Yeah, and I just think he's great. I thought all the brothers. If you don't mind me talking about Jeremy Allen White for a second,
sure.
I'm in that same boat with you. I was like, okay, he's a big deal right now. And when I found out that he was attached to the movie, I was very excited because of how much I like him. And I was like, oh well, he's just going to be this force and just steal the movie from everyone. And it's Carrie Von Erich, so of course he's going to be this fiery person. And it's the same thing. He's very restrained. There's a strain put on the family because of the situation that they're in, and I think all of the actors really handle that well. And instead of it pushing him where he really dominates every moment, I think it just kind of lends more to him like meshing with everyone, where he just kind of finds that groove. So I don't think he stole the movie. Like I was like you were also nervous he wouldn't. I just thought he was a great support to it, and I think Zac Efron really is the highlight. Even though I also really like the actors who played the other two brothers too. I was really taken with Harris Dickinson because that man is British, and you could have fooled me.
Right.
But yeah, they were great performances across the board.
Talking about restraint, I was also very excited to see a film that would put Holt McCallany or McElhaney, I'm not sure how you say his name, in a big, forefront kind of a role. He's fantastic. Anything that I see him in, he's great. He's got such a good presence. I was devastated when they said that they weren't going to do another season of Mindhunters. And this movie, we're following a lot of biopic tropes. That's fine. But as the villain of the movie, he's not always evil. He's not always wicked. He is their dad. And so he's there. And the mom is there. And there are seasons where they're happy and nice, and there's seasons where they're not nice and where they're too strict. And it just felt very, very real.
Yeah.
So many times in biopics, the dad is the bad guy or doesn't understand, and it's kind of like that's the beginning, and then you leave him behind. Where in this one, they're a family all the way through, and they enjoy being around each other. Yes, they're in competition with each other to an extent, but they enjoy being around each other. And I so appreciated scenes where he would just say something absolutely despicable and then turn right around and say something very nice.
Yeah.
Or be like, all right, now let's go play football, because that's what life is like. You don't always get to run away from your parent who is mean to you. They're your parent. They're with you for life.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt like all of the sequences where Fritz was, shown as kind of the domineering, domineering guy, everything felt intentional. Everything felt like, oh, this makes sense. Like what he's trying to do is not to be mean, not to be an ass, but because he really is, he's trying to bring out the best of his sons. And listen, I say that, and I know, like, there was a lot of weight.
It's abusive.
Unjustly put on. Yeah,
it's not good. It's not good at all.
Listen, I'm not excusing Fritz von Erich, but I think there's a lot of intention. He wants his family to succeed. He wants them to accomplish the things that he wasn't able to accomplish. I just think, he goes about that the wrong way. But I think it's all very, purposeful. And it makes it so he has layers to him where he's not like, I think of course, it's the satire of this, but you think of the dad in Walk Hard, where he's just very, the wrong son died today. Right. And, you feel like in this movie, there's a chance that Fritz von Erich might say that. Right. But, they pull back on it where it all feels like a person is genuinely experiencing the highs, the lows, everything. And he just ultimately wants his family to thrive. Even though his execution, questionable.
Right. And he gets to be a full person, and everyone in this, they get to be a full person. I loved Mara Tierney as the mother. Yes. I was like floored by her. Not that I haven't been impressed with her before. I was glad, to see that she was in this, and when she came on screen, I was like, oh, this will be cool. But I was just floored by how she navigated this role. And I mean, major props to obviously the screenplay, but she does this tight-lipped anguish of like, she's determined to not interfere, and she's also determined to not let that decision bother her. But you can see her just getting eaten up throughout this film. And she was really great. We haven't mentioned yet Stanley Simons as Mike.
Yes. Oh man,
he's good in the beginning, as kind of like the younger, less muscly brother, and then I think completely surprises you in the back end after he has, his accident in the surgery. And I was like, oh, I'm not prepared for another kind of gut-wrenching performance. Like I wasn't ready for this to also pile on. And I thought he was great.
It was, when you look at him and look at the actual, Mike von Erich, he was a different. They both look very different. However, the way that he kind of carried himself after the accident, really, it looks like Stanley Simons did his research on watching like the footage and stuff, because it's not an imitation, but it's kind of capturing that essence of what it was like, and it's as painful to kind of see him recreate those moments. I thought he was great, and he's a character that you feel for like the entire stretch of the film, because it's like these three brothers are in their prime, like primo athletes, just everything that their father ever wanted in a son, in sons, and he has 3 of them. And then you've got Mike, who is scrawny, and is interested in the technical aspect of the wrestling program, and interested in music. Like, that is as far removed from what Fritz would want from a son, and it's painful to kind of watch him still kind of like strive for that affection when that it's everything he is runs completely counter to what Fritz wants.
Right. On those lines, this to me, yes, this is a wrestling movie, definitely. Mm-hmm. But wrestling is kind of just the setting.
Yep.
This family could be a family of musicians. It could be a family of circus performers. Yes. This is just a family story. And what I liked was that they mentioned that Fritz was a classically trained, what was it?
Oh, I can't remember.
Clarinet.
Yes.
Yeah, clarinet. He's a classically trained clarinet player. And then you also find out that the mother is a fantastic painter. Mm-hmm. And some of wrestling involves acting, and it involves public speaking, and it involves publicity. And this family really is just a family of performers to me. And it's part of the tragedy of Mike is that he has the same drive to do that thing in a crowd of people, right?
Yep.
It's just in a different way, and they kind of shut it down. And it's like, how can you not see, like, when he's like, oh yeah, I'm getting paid for this gig, and the dad's like, no. It's like, how can you not see that if he put as much time into music and encouragement, he could be making more money than all of you, you know?
Yeah.
So,
the world of professional wrestling, like, used to be thought of along the same lines as like carnival. Like, it's a traveling carnival. And like, this is just what Mike wanted was just another aspect of the carnival than what, the father was. Like, the father's like the ringmaster, and taming the animals. And, Mike is, with the freak show or something like that, just another aspect of performing that's, very, very different from the main thing, but still it's there. And I just think I agree with you. I think it's sad that, they couldn't quite see that it was in the same category, just going off in a different direction.
Yeah. I mean, I have 2 kids, and so 2 boys. And so the scene at the end with the line about not being a brother anymore, and the 2 boys being like, well, we'll be your brothers. I was just like, I was like ready to call 911.
Yep.
But watching films like this now, clearly, like I said, Fritz, it's abusive, it's wrong. Okay. And I don't agree with any of it. But as a parent, I can still learn something from him.
Yeah.
And I feel like what I took away mostly was you have to be able to see that, when your kids want to do something different, you have to let them do the thing that they think will make you proud, even if it's not the thing that you want them to do, that you would be proud of. Because Mike's intention isn't to like run away from the family, and he also loves his family, and he also loves his brothers.
Yes.
And so everyone should be more tolerant of what the people in their lives want to do, and let them make you proud in the way that they want to. So I wanted to talk about how this movie looks, because it looks incredible.
Awesome.
We get this
Excellent.
The opening shot where Fritz is stomping a guy on the ropes, and it looks incredible. Like, it looks beautiful.
This like beautiful, crisp black and white photography. Oh man. Yeah.
We get so many great dissolves, and we get this dissolve of him and his, his face, his mind, and the rain kind of just like blurring together. We get another dissolve later on of all three brothers after a match where they're just blurring together, but it's not like in a psychedelic way. It's happening very slowly. And it's like you can kind of keep your focus on one of them and you're like, okay. And then you just kind of lose them and the other one comes to the forefront. It looks great. The scene that really I was like, oh, this movie, yes, it's a tragic film, but it's also a film that's entertaining us. There's a shot outside of one of the arenas, and it's very Boogie Nights, Goodfellas.
Yes.
Where the camera is following people making our way into the building. And it's like the camera is a ball that's being passed off between totally random people that, you know, we'll never see again.
Yeah.
And my jaw was like on the floor. I was just like, how do you do that shot, which has been done several times and, you know, is lauded as some of the best oneers in film history? And they found a way to do it that felt fresh and fun. And so I don't know, did anything stand out to you? And
I think that entrance to the Sportatorium is just incredible. And I think one of the reasons it works so well is because there is this energy and excitement to it, where they're just like, we're going to a wrestling show, and it's all of the people in this, you know, in Dallas who are just super excited to go watch wrestling. And you get that vibe with the movement of the camera, with the people that you see, the conversations that they're having. Like, it is just so well executed and beautifully staged. And if I remember right, it goes into the arena too, right? Like, you're not just outside, it does further. And it's just that whole, like, the whole shot is just filled with absolute excitement. And that really makes it where it's like, you know, in Boogie Nights, which does it also really well, there's a vibe of like, also excitement, but a very different kind of excitement, like an excess excitement. And here it's like, we're going to a show. You know, it could be a concert, that same energy that they have, where they could very well just be going to, like, you know, 1970s, going to see Kiss or you know, someone like that, where it's just, oh yes, I am pumped, I am excited, and I think that's great. The shot you were talking about too, where the three faces kind of overlap each other. That was one of the first, probably not the first gut punch, but one of the first gut punches for me, because it was like, there's something symbolic about having them all three kind of blend together, where it's like they're united. They're so they have such a love for each other. They have such a bond, but yet, you know, they're competitive with each other. But it's like the best form of competition with each other, because, you know, at the end of the day, no matter what happens, the three of them are still going to love each other deeply. But then there was also this thought of, like, if I remember correctly, that was after a match where Fritz kind of upset. I think they had the conversation where Kevin was, who was kind of in line to be champion, but then Fritz said, you know, David, you're going to get the title shot. And it was like that, this idea that maybe Fritz sees them all interchangeably. Like, it's not, you know, he doesn't see David, Kevin, and Carrie. He sees, oh, well, this one is, you know, he ranks them. He ranks the kids earlier on in the movie as to who he loves the most. And it's like, they all blend together until one of them does something to stand out. And I think, you know, you kind of see where the three shots are on top of each other. There's something about each one that stands out, you know, if you look at it a certain way. And I think that's kind of like symbolic as to how Fritz sees his sons is like, you know, they're all my tools to get what I want until something stands out about them. But yeah, I thought the overall look of the movie, having this kind of like brown tone to it, just very earthy and dark, but not like Game of Thrones dark, not where it was to the point where you can't see everything. It just kind of added to the, you know, we're wrestling in dirty arenas and gyms, and, you know, professional wrestling is very popular, but it hasn't yet got to, you know, where it was in the 80s. with like the production value of WWF. I don't know. I just I thought it nailed it. I thought it just nailed the look of that era and the feel of that era. And these are some of, now granted, there aren't a lot of wrestling movies to kind of base it for comparison, but this is head and shoulders above Ready to Rumble.
As far as
the wrestling sequences are concerned. I thought the wrestling scenes looked great. Like if I could watch a wrestling pay-per-view that had these shots, like it would just be the greatest thing ever put to film. But yeah, I thought the cinematography was just chef's kiss, perfect.
Yeah, and Efron really doing some stuff. I was pretty surprised, and doing it barefoot. I was like, okay, all right.
I had forgotten that Kevin Von Erich wrestled barefoot. I was like, why are we doing this? I thought he wore boots. Nope. That man wrestled barefoot, and Zac Efron was fully committed.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I want to ask you about. We get two endings, really. Mm-hmm. One, which I'm calling the big swing ending, and two, which is the kind of wrap up. We see what happens in real life, and so yeah. What did you think? What did you think about those?
So I'm guessing the big swing ending is kind of the fantasy sequence.
Yes, the afterlife.
Yeah. So my perspective on that, my thoughts on that, is that this is Kevin's thought as to what's going on with his brothers. And if I think of it that way, I'm like, oh, yeah. I mean, he wants his brothers to be happy again because he knows that they weren't in this life. After David's passing, I feel like if we go off of this, because it's been debated, like as to what actually happened with David Von Erich, I think there's a lot of like discussion. But I think if we go with this story, it was so shocking and unexpected. I think it was shocking and unexpected no matter what. But it was kind of a crazy fluke that this happened, and I think everybody kind of went downhill from there. So everybody who'd passed afterwards was still kind of wallowing in that unhappiness that David's passing caused.
Yeah.
And I think for Kevin getting to imagine his family, his brothers together again and happy and like at peace, like I think it made it didn't make it right for him because I still feel like he, of course, was just devastated by all of this.
Yeah.
But I think it gave him something to kind of be like, well, at least they're together again. At least there's that, and they'll be there for me when it's my time. Whenever that may be. But I dealt with that fantasy sequence a lot better than I probably would have, because the whole movie is so grounded in reality, and then you get this kind of fantasy. But I think because the shot right afterwards is Kevin holding Carrie's hand, on the table, I think it's kind of like, oh, this is Kevin thinking, I get this, I'm okay with that. And then the second ending, the wrap up.
Yeah,
I liked it. It was the part that really got me to the ugly cry, where I shook the aisle because I was crying. I think it's when you like a movie, it's really hard to offer give a criticism because it's like you don't want to be too harsh on it. But I do wish that maybe there was a little bit that discussed Kevin's kind of struggle afterwards, because Kevin contemplated suicide after his other brothers passed away. And it feels like a little too neat of a bow. But at that point, we've gotten the crap beaten out of us as an audience. And I think having that levity and the look that, we know how the story has gone. Like Kevin has lived. Kevin's had a very happy life, past this point with his family. I think that getting that is kind of like a reward to the audience. Like, hey, you made it through. Let's make sure that that Kevin is fine. Kevin's okay. I think that's good. But yeah, I think there's a part of me that might have wanted just that little bit of like that, Kevin lost his brothers and he's struggling. But we've already watched the struggle. We might not need any more. So maybe that's a wishy-washy answer, but that's kind of where I'm at.
I agree, and I think yes, we could see that. But if we just look at it from where do we end? Where does the story end? And we get the picture of him and his family, and I'm okay with kind of bypassing some of that because this isn't a 10-part miniseries. So eventually you have to say this is where we're cutting it. Shout out to Lily James playing Pam. I thought that she did good. She was interesting. I've only seen her in a few other things, but I liked what she did here. And I like that we do end on kind of a happy note. And yeah, I was like totally just losing it at this point. But as far as the afterlife sequence, once I saw Jeremy Allen White, walk out of the house, you see that he has both legs. I was like, wow, okay. And I just felt like buckle up because this could go south. Like this could really, what are they going to do? And I think they pulled it off. I mean, I think they did it. I think it's a little artistic flair to the story. When we see the eldest brother, who is the youngest brother, I really lost it at that point. I was like, but also like two things were happening to me. I think that there was just the human part of me that was just, opening up and crying and like, oh my God, life is incredible. And then there's the story watcher, listener, teller part of me that was just tripling down inside of myself. Like, oh man, this is so risky. This is so risky.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think for people who are into the film and who know the story of the Von Erichs, I think that this will work for them. It will be very sad for me in the coming months and years to hear people trash that sequence because it had such an effect on me.
Yep.
But, hey, that's, we're used to, like, I mean, I'm sitting in the theater thinking like, I need to live. I need to be a better dad, and I need to be a better husband, and I need to be a better, I'm having all of these experiences, and then I leave and someone's like, oh, Zac Efron's wig looked dumb in that movie.
And the guy who played Ric Flair wasn't very good.
Right. And you kind of have to stop yourself from just reaching out and like choking that person and being like, hey, because there's movies that I absolutely despise that really mean something to other people. But I think they pulled that off, and that they pulled it off actually made me like the sequence more because I was like, you really put a wonderful film on the line here. Like unnecessarily, it's not part of the story. You could have tanked this film, and that they didn't, I think, is a credit to, again, how the film looks and how it's performed by the actors. But
it's funny thinking about it of like what could have gone wrong to really make that scene just kind of make everything shift. And I was thinking about it while you were talking, and I was like, if they did something where like one of the brothers turned to the camera or like turned out facing something and was like, we'll be here waiting for you, brother. Something like that. It would be, it would add that, we get it. We get what you're going for. I'm glad they excluded that. But I think if something like that were really just there to hit it over the head, it would have been like, no, this was a bad choice.
If we went into like biopic mode and he walks into a stadium and there's the ring there and they're all meeting there. And that's what I liked about the movie is, yes, it's a wrestling movie. But when I think back on it, I think mostly of their time at home or like their time at the party. not that the wrestling scenes aren't, I mean, really well orchestrated. Right. It looked great.
Right.
It looked great.
Yeah.
But it's really a story about the family. And I think that was another part of it that they definitely chose well. You know, we see the floating down the river, which we had already seen prior. And yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah, it's a story about family and brotherhood, and I think the wrestling is just kind of the shading. Like that's what definitely kind of adds the little details to it. You know, it just so happens to be a family and brotherhood that's set amongst the professional wrestling world.
Yeah.
But man, it's the impact of the relationship between those brothers is what really makes this movie more than anything wrestling related in it.
Yeah, and I think Zach as Kevin portraying him as just infinitely sweet. You know, he has the drive to be the best, but he just wants everyone to be happy and he wants everyone to be with each other. And the one thing that he wants is the one thing that keeps getting taken away from him. Like when he's like, my dream is to be the heavyweight champion. And then you see that he misses his shot. And I just want to be with my brothers. And then one by one, his brothers are taken from him. The movie sets you up to just automatically be endeared to him. There's no way. Like you can't look at, you know, twinkly eye Zac Efron, who's going through all these things and kind of like kick him while he's down. I think that goes into a bigger conversation, which is that I think whenever people say movies are manipulative, I think that's nonsense. I think yes, of course, it's everything is manipulative. What are you talking about?
It's a story being told. Yeah, like, of course, it's supposed to convey an emotion or help you get to a certain point.
They're trying to elicit a response from you.
Yes,
and if that's action, they know when to cue the music. They know what shots to use to excite you. And that's why people fall into a genre that they love. When people are like, oh, I'm all into horror. Well, you like being manipulated into those feelings for whatever reason. And I'm not going to say that that's wrong. And I'm not going to say that the artists shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah. Like you hit the nail right on the head. Like a horror movie is manipulating an audience to feel fear. Like that's what telling a story is. And I think it's just the connotation you put on the word manipulation. Like it's just eliciting a response. Like that's kind of what life is, really.
Right.
So
we shouldn't manipulate people out of their money. We shouldn't manipulate people into a relationship, you know, or into doing things they don't want to do, but into feelings in the realm of art. That is exactly what you should be doing.
That's the whole point. I was curious on your opinion of this. Now, I'll do the same thing you did earlier. Is I'll ask you a question and then I'll answer it myself and then let you answer it.
Good.
The exclusion of Chris Von Erich.
Yes.
I understand why it was done. Because tragedy after tragedy after tragedy after tragedy after tragedy is just a lot for an audience to take. I wish there would have been maybe a note like in the credits or something like beforehand that said, the truth of the story is that there was another brother, something like that. I don't know how to phrase it, but I wish there would have been an acknowledgement of Chris, but I understand for dramatic purposes why his story was kind of condensed, or why his story was excluded, and they kind of took parts and put it into Mike's story. Because how much can an audience take of just seeing these terrible things continue to happen, even more than what we see in the movie? So I wasn't distraught over it, but I do wish there was some kind of acknowledgement. That's just me. I was curious what your kind of feelings were on that.
I'm a fan of lawn films, and I think, as I've said 10 times already, yes, this is a wrestling film, but it's something else. Make this movie an epic. Make it an American family epic, like Giant or like Gone with the Wind. Make this thing over 200 minutes long and give it more time to do everything. I think there you fit in, Chris. The only thing that I will say is I did see a comment from Sean Durkin pretty quickly after the wide release.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's trying to hide it, and he was open and gave his reasoning that he thought it would be too much for audiences.
Yeah.
But I would have preferred if they had put that in there. Now, having said that, I'm a dude sitting in his room recording an episode on this.
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with the budget, the scheduling. It's possible that in order to get this story told, they had X amount of time and money and resources to do it. And looking at that, they had to decide what to cut and what to keep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. And I just wish that this was longer. Like as it kept going, it's like, oh, I could watch. I mean, how many hours of wrestling do people watch every single week?
Yeah.
I haven't watched Raw in years, but it's like 3 hours, isn't it?
It's a 3-hour show.
Right. Like, once a week.
Wrestling fans can sit down and watch 3 hours, like, no problem. Right. No problem.
And so if you filled this out a little bit more, I would have had no problem being with them longer and, telling the full story. But also, I understand sometimes, the version of the story that you tell might be the better story. And that doesn't mean, it's the more exciting story. It's just this made for a better story. And so if I really have a problem with it, I'll go out and amass millions and millions of dollars and I'll make my own movie.
Yeah. Right. I agree. I like I said, I kind of see, I definitely see both sides on it. It didn't bother me because that was kind of the story that they were wanting to tell was much more condensed and focused. But I would have, with all of these, the discourse over film runtimes, this is a movie that I could have easily sat for another hour, and just been like, even though it probably would have hurt, I still would have.
Right.
I was so taken with this movie that another hour would have just been a journey I've been willing to go on.
Yeah, I feel bad whenever I'll make a comment about a film like, it could have been a little bit shorter.
Mm-hmm.
But I love long movies. I just finished Dogville for the first time, 3-hour movie. And with that one too, I was like, I could have done this for 4 hours, like easily. And that goes back to the Ebert quote, a good movie is never long enough and a bad movie isn't short enough. That's not the exact quote, but that's the general idea. And so, again, you and I are sitting here as two people who loved this movie. Mm-hmm. If I was sitting here with someone who didn't love it as much, that person might be saying, I was fine with them leaving out Chris, and I wish that they had left out Carrie as well.
Yeah, right.
Did you have anything else?
No, I think that's it. I think, just overall, I thought this was great. It's tough to say, like, I was so excited to see this movie. I'm so glad that the story came to light because this is all so harrowing and so painful.
Yeah.
But as someone who kind of grew up with this story kind of being there and these people being in the world and knowing of their existence, like, it's thrilling to see that the story gets told in such a way that was so respectful.
Right.
And so much work and so much thought and care put into it. Because I think there's a stigma that goes with professional wrestling as just being this, ridiculous thing. And I think kind of having a story told that was so detail oriented and so kind of sensitive to what was going on really is just it's just what we need. And I'm so glad that it exists, and so glad that it's so well done. Because this is a movie I will be watching for years to come.
Definitely. I know that there are millions of dollars involved in wrestling and that there are superstars and that we have The Rock and that we had Hulk Hogan and all of these people who are internationally known and famous, but I do think that it remains a subculture. And anytime a subculture is portrayed with sensitivity and not exploitation, I'm always here for that. And so this felt like, okay, they're doing this right and they're doing this justice, and not just focusing on the reign, but the history of wrestling, how the business side of wrestling works, the ups and the downs of that. And I think that this is a high watermark for wrestling films, definitely. You know, for years I was like, The Wrestler, Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler, great movie, Mickey Rourke, fantastic job by him.
Yeah.
And it's good that this exists also.
Yes.
To not just be a one-off thing of this is only compelling like one time or in an imaginary world. It's like, no, actually everyone's story can be compelling if told correctly. And I agree.
Right.
It was told correctly. So Andy, where can people find you online?
Yeah, if you're interested to follow all things Fat Dude Digs Flicks, you can give a search on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd. Just do a search, like I said, for Fat Dude Digs Flicks. You'll find me there. And then my podcast is on all of the usual suspects as far as podcasting apps are concerned. I do both the Let's Talk About, which is an interview show where I chat with a guest about their life, their passions, and then one movie that has had a particular impact on them. And then the other show on that network is called The Criterion Break, and that's where two friends and I sit down and talk about how much we love the Criterion Collection for usually like an hour and a half to 2 hours. So
definitely check him out. Definitely give him a follow. As you've heard for the last hour-ish, he's a very nice dude, well-spoken, and a lot of fun. So get on it. As always, thank you for listening. You can send us an email, moviefriendspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought about the Iron Claw. We'd also love it if you'd rate and review the show. It really helps us find new listeners, because the only thing that the computer overlords pay attention to anymore are clicks and follows and reviews. So that would be great. That would help out the show. You can also support the show, patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. $5 a month gets you access to, at this point, I don't know, man, a ton of extra stuff. You support an independent podcast, and we never have to run ads on the show. So if you don't want to hear ads for underwear, get on it. Well, Andy, thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. I managed to not cry, so I'm glad.
That's good. Like I did the same thing, and I am a crier just in general. Probably cry every single day of my life about something. And I avoided them here. I was close. Just thinking about.
Yeah, me too. Thinking about it, I was like, oh my God.
But yeah, thank you so much, Seth. It was awesome to get to chat with you and about this movie that really I adored. So yeah, just a blast. So thanks again, Seth.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for listening. Till next time, have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Music by Anthony Vicora. If you like the show, please subscribe and give us a rating. It really helps us find new friends. Thanks.